In what world is asking questions or asking to observe the validation of the election in the state of Georgia a criminal act? If this was a criminal act, that celebrity video we played a couple weeks ago, urging the electors that were going to Congress in 2016 to not vote for Trump, that is also an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy of Hillary Clinton to steal the 2016 election. Stacey Abrams, the longtime fake governor of Georgia, said for years that she had the election stolen from her. That is also an act in furtherance with a conspiracy to steal an election. Trump is allowed to say that he thinks that the election was stolen from him, and to take steps within the bounds of the Constitution, actually put into the Constitution for challenging elections, and not have it be a crime.
So it's another week, and it's another set of Trump indictments. What more can we even say about this at this point? I mean, we've talked about this 3 different times already. Are we just going to say the same things over and over again every time there's an indictment? On indictment number 20, is there going to be anything new to say about this topic? But there is a New York Times article that I put in the show notes where the author sums it up pretty nicely, which is kind of surprising to say, considering it's the New York Times I'm talking about, as far as I'm concerned. And he writes, yet most Americans made up their minds about Mr. Trump long before prosecutors like Fannie T. Willis or Jack Smith weighed in, polls have shown. He is, depending on your perspective, a serial lawbreaker finally being brought to justice, or a victim of persecution by partisans intent on keeping him out of office. The Georgia indictment, powerful as it is in its language, has been priced into the market, as the Wall Street types would put it. So I think that this guy generally has it right. If anything, I think that it's getting I'm getting more and more confident that this is all just a circus act, and the more indictments that pile up, the more rings in the circus. That's basically how I'm looking at it. And I just can't imagine somebody that's like, after the first 2 indictments, I thought it was all BS, but now after the 3rd and 4th, I'm starting to change my mind on Trump. Jim, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh my God. Donnie, not you two. Not you two. I don't know. I mean, this is a travesty. And every time I think that it can't get worse and that we become more of a banana republic, another banana's added to the bunch. I mean,
exactly.
And by the way, it's supposedly just fine that the charges were released online accidentally before the grand jury even voted to hand up this indictment. That was so the fix wasn't in. So we're also to believe that's what I mean by every time I think it can't get worse, it gets worse all the time. But this indictment in Georgia is probably the most ridiculous and tragic, might be a word for it, of all of the indictments against Donald Trump. This is basically criminalizing a legal theory. Now, for Trump to win the election. Now, it was a long shot legal theory, and it was to throw up as much doubt as possible into the integrity of the election, to throw the selection of the president under the Constitution to the House of Representatives, which would, since it was dominated by Republicans, of course, still is now, they probably would have picked Trump president instead of Biden. But this is not unprecedented. Now, bear with me. Almost this exact scenario took place in the election of 1876. So let me know if any of this stuff sounds familiar to you guys. The Democrat, Sam Tilden, he won the popular vote 51% to 48%, which is about the margin of victory in the popular vote for Joe Biden. There were allegations of fraud, election violence, and other methods of disenfranchisement. South Carolina, for instance, reported that 101% of eligible voters voted in the 1876 election, which of course was impossible. The Democrat governor of Oregon disqualified one of the Republican electors to select the president in Congress on sketchy grounds. They replaced him with a Democrat one. Electors showed up in Congress with certificates signed by Democrats and claimed they were the legitimate electors. And then some from the same state showed up with certificates signed by Republicans that said they were the legitimate electors. And that's one of the charges, I think, in one of the other indictments against Donald Trump, that was an illegal act. So Democrats, they claimed fraud in that 1876 election. A shot was actually fired at the home of Rutherford B. Hayes while he was there, apparently sitting down to dinner while this was all going on. Ulysses S. Grant, who did not want to run for re-election, which is kind of where all this chaos happened. He would have been reelected easily. he strengthened the troop presence in Washington, D.C., just in case some crazy riots or something might happen, which, well, again, does that sound familiar? The Democrats in charge of Congress famously refused to do that in the case here in 2020. So that's the kind of the chaos that the Trump team wanted. And, you can say what you want about it, whether it's a good thing to do, a bad thing to do, but it is a legal strategy that has history behind it. And it uses the Constitution as its guide. Now, this is not to call that criminal. A legal theory to challenge an election, a criminal act, is insane. And this is why we were becoming a banana republic, because it's not. So yet in this indictment from Georgia, after basically listing all of Trump's challenges to the legitimacy of the process in Georgia, and he did so in other states, which is entirely legal to do, the indictment ends each one of these 161 counts with the words, "This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy." So guys, let me know if you think this stuff is criminal activity. In the indictment, it says Donald Trump tweeting his followers to watch, quote, "hearings from Atlanta on the Georgia election overturn." And he urged them to watch the coverage of that on One American News Network and something called the Right Side Broadcasting Network. This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy, according to the indictment. He also tweeted that Brian Kemp, the Georgia Secretary of State, should resign because Kemp refused to admit that Trump won big. This was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy, according to the indictment. Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, he texted the chief investigator for the Georgia Secretary of State asking, quote, "Is there a way to speed up the Fulton County signature verification process in order to have the results in before January 6th? This was an act in furtherance of the conspiracy." One more example. Meadows also arrived in Cobb County, Georgia, and said he wanted to observe the ballot auditing process, which was going on. This is apparently not, quote unquote, open to the public, according to the indictment, but just asking to do that is, quote, "an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy." Now, in what world is asking questions or asking to observe the validation of the election in the state of Georgia a criminal act? If this was a criminal act, that celebrity video we played a couple weeks ago, urging the electors that were going to Congress in 2016 to not vote for Trump, that is also an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy of Hillary Clinton to steal the 2016 election. Stacey Abrams, the longtime fake governor of Georgia, said for years that she had the election stolen from her. That is also an act in furtherance with a conspiracy to steal an election. And I'm a little older than you guys. I was about your age, Donnie, when the 2000 election came around, and Bush sued because Gore in Florida tried to have a recount, but only in Democrat counties where it would be possible for him to win. So Bush had to sue to stop that, get a recount for the entire state, and he won narrowly, but he actually won. That would also be a criminal act, according to this indictment. And I'm going to tell you why all of this matters, and then we'll throw it out to other people. There was a story in The Hill today, or this week, that that a majority of voters, 53%, think that Trump did something illegal. Daily News had a story. Trump plunges to 35% favorability, 53% back the indictments against Trump. Quinnipiac poll, 54% of all voters and 57% of independents think Trump should be criminally prosecuted. And so that's what this is about. It's to convince, the old cliche, where there's smoke, there's fire. This is fake smoke. This isn't smoke at all. There's no fire whatsoever. These are not crimes. But the point of it, the intention of this is to get Trump, is to get enough people in the public to believe there must be something here. He must have done something criminal. While at the same time, of course, there are very strong allegations of genuine criminal activity involving what would be Trump's opponent in the 2024 election that are completely ignored. So this is why I wanted to start off talking about this, because I wanted to get all that out. I'm a little madder than I'm actually expressing on this podcast, believe it or not.
No way.
Because this is insane. This we cannot have an America when this kind of stuff goes on, where one side can challenge all they want. And Hillary Clinton can say for years that the election was stolen from me, and that's not in furtherance of some sort of conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy. That's just an opinion. Trump is allowed to say that he thinks that the election was stolen from him, and to take steps within the bounds of the Constitution, actually put into the Constitution for challenging elections, and not have it be a crime. But it is a crime because, well, I keep being told it doesn't exist, but the deep state does not want Donald Trump to be president. And frankly, they don't want the people who would support and vote for Donald Trump to have any say in the way this country is run.
Yeah, I started off this this segment saying, what more can we say? Apparently, quite a bit. If if you're asking Jim to comment on this, Chris, is the corporate media just having a field day? Like, is this just their
Are you kidding me?
jubilee?
That's all that is all they are talking about 24/7 on the usual suspects, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS. They are just covering this thing to the till. I mean, just nonstop,
Right.
every single angle you can think of. I agree with what Jim said. I also think this is just about trying to, wrangle Trump's campaign into so much legal, maneuverings that he's unable to, campaign during the primaries, because he's now got 4 trials that are supposed to occur right during the primary campaign season in early 2024. So I think this is really just about trying to keep him, out of the campaign spotlight and keep him just, wrapped in these legal, entanglements for as long as possible. So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, I'm really starting to think that these indictments are far bigger than just like Trump. I think it's far more nefarious than just trying to harm or hurt Trump's chances in the election. I think that it's more than just like an attempt at vindication for finally making Trump out to be the villain that they've suggested he's been for years. I think that this has more to do, and this is kind of reflected a little bit in the Federalist article that I have in the show notes that's titled "The Purpose of the Trump Indictments is to Demonstrate the Left's Power." And basically it goes in, I'm not taking a little bit further than what even that article suggests, but I think that this is all about just trying to send a very clear message to anybody, Trump included, anybody that wants to try to disrupt the system in a Trump-esque way. And that message is very simple. You're playing with fire and you're going to get burned if you're standing in our way. So like anyone that has this idea of like, well, I'm going to become president. I'm an outsider. I'm going to do stuff. I'm going to drain the swamp. No. You're not going to do that because you're going to get caught up in a million indictments, baseless, indictments like this, just like him. So the next person that wants to follow in Trump's footsteps, they're like, nah, you know what? I'm going to sit this one out. Linnea, what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And it's not a left and right thing either. I think that's become very obvious. I think that there is definitely a uniparty, which is that the people who have been entrenched, the Bush people, the Clintons, all these families that have been coming up through politics together, the Kennedys even. I know that people tend to like RFK right now, but he's got some... I've got some questions about that guy. He seems to flip-flop more than almost anyone I've ever seen within the same day even. So I don't really understand the adulation that he's getting. But I don't think that it's just directed towards people who are thinking about running on a, America First type of platform either. I think that it's directed at us, actually. I actually think that the uniparty, the overstate, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, I think that they are livid and they will never forgive people for voting for Trump. I think that they are absolutely infuriated that we would dare to vote for someone who the entire media establishment, the entire GOP major establishment, the DNC, everyone was working very hard to put down during his primaries back in 2016. And I think that they're mad at us, which is why you see it's not just the political level that has a very obvious imbalance in the justice system. It's also reaching down into our, like, the random civilian level. You see the stuff from the FBI targeting Catholic churches. You see stuff from the FBI targeting parents and who dare to stand up against the kind of left-wing agenda in the schools. You see them targeting pro-life protesters who aren't even, doing any violence or anything. We just had a court case come down about that you can't allow BLM to burn the city down for months at a time and then prosecute no one, and then go ahead and prosecute some people who are praying silently outside of a Planned Parenthood.
Right.
It's been, I think that the message is for us, not necessarily for people who are running.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Jim, I mean, we're 20 minutes into the podcast. I want to get into our main topics, but since you're obviously very passionate about this, I'll give you final words.
I'll just say that, there's still a pretty good chance that I think I saw that they want to start the trial in Georgia in March of 2024. So right in the middle of the presidential campaign. And so, the United States government and the people of the United States used to be able to look down their noses at countries that had societies in which they would jail one of the popular candidates to be president of their country. And we now live in that country, and we will now live in that country for the rest of our lives. And to me, that's pretty depressing.
I've heard that they've got a new trial system set up for him, where they're just going to bring him to a cliff over the water and throw him off. And if he flies away, that means he's guilty. But if he sinks to the bottom, that means he's innocent. So I'm pretty sure that's what they're going with.
That would make more legal sense than what they're trying to accomplish right now.
Here's one very interesting compare and contrast. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, is still not on trial for his deeds of 22 years ago. Donald Trump is going to immediately go to trial within weeks. Just interesting.
Right.